Hello dear friend, in this video we are gonna talk about the upcoming solar eclipse in Gemini on the 10th of June 2021. You will learn why solar eclipses are so important and what actually makes this one so special. And also we will discuss the specific aspects which change the overall influence, and also we are going to make a short prediction about each of the signs so that you know, based on your sun and rising sign, how the solar eclipse in Gemini will trigger your chart and of course your life as well. So the first thing we need to say here, what is actually a solar eclipse? The solar eclipse is a regular new moon, meaning an exact conjunction between the sun and the moon, which also includes one of the lunar nodes. We may have a solar eclipse which triggers the south or the north node, and that's extremely important. In this case, on the 6th of June, the solar eclipse in Gemini will trigger the north node, and that's related to our future. The north node is the one which is related to areas of life where we can gain something, areas of life where we can expand. Overall, that's the future direction. So we need to concentrate more on the future. It's not so much about processing the past or working with it or, like looking back. No, your focus should be on the present and the future. And this eclipse can allow you to look at things from a truly different perspective and to gain something new and to expand something. And of course, the sign position is extremely important. This solar eclipse triggers the sign Gemini. And Gemini is related to our ideas. It's the sign related to the mind, especially the practical, analytical, concrete mind. So that's what we should concentrate on, using our mind as our greatest resource and learning actually how to have control over our thoughts, over the things that we say. For some people that might be relevant, for others not so much, and overall learning to communicate better. Communication always starts with ourselves. So how do you communicate with yourself? What are the words you tell to yourself most often? How do you express your ideas to other people? How do you communicate? Are you good in having dialogues and listening to other people? Those are some of the big questions of this solar eclipse in Gemini. And something also quite interesting and impressive. The ruler of the solar eclipse is Gemini. The ruler is Mercury, of course. And Mercury happens to be in Gemini right now in conjunction with the solar eclipse and also retrograde. And even more, actually, we are having a burned Mercury. Mercury is combust. Mercury is combust when it's no more than 3 degrees away from the sun. So basically here we will have a solar eclipse which kind of like triggers the conscious mind, and also Mercury is invisible. So thoughts and ideas might be working on a very invisible level. And it might feel a little confusing. That is true. So the mind may feel like overwhelmed or overexcited about something or confused by something. Here, it's important to learn to listen to our inner truth because Mercury is retrograde. Don't search for the answers outside of yourself. The answers are in you, and you need to listen to them. Mercury retrograde is not necessarily something bad. There are issues which we cannot deny. Contracts, negotiations, all of that can be messed up. That is true. But the reason for that is because Mercury goes more internal. And on this internal level, it may bring some important changes. So we may struggle when it comes to connecting externally with others right now, or feeling like, we are heard and understood by others. That might be a problem. But the focus should be more on learning to listen to ourselves first. And this solar eclipse with Combust Mercury is a great time and a great opportunity for us to learn and actually do that. So focus on your ideas about the future. What would you want to learn, or what would you want to share with others? And generally, what kind of questions do you have? I really love this idea, which I have heard by Tony Robbins. He talks a lot about this, about having quality questions. And I totally agree with that. We may had bad quality questions, like, for example, why am I always failing? Or why do I suck in this? Or what's wrong with me? You cannot come up with positive answers to that. But if you have a question like, how can I become better? How can I do better? How can I improve? With this question, you may come up with much more meaningful questions. So I think that it's a great time to really think about the questions that you have in your mind and the chat and the dialogue you have internally. And also, a nice idea I truly agree with is that you may come up with concrete questions for your subconscious mind, meaning that, for example, you need a solution about something. How do I, for example, succeed more in my business? Or how can I travel more, for example? And you cannot seem to have a good answer right now, but you may kind of like ask this question for your subconscious mind to come up with an answer, to give you some insights. And it's so amazing how answers may show up in such surprising ways. You may find the right book next time you're in the bookstore. You may see the right ad, or someone else may call you and like bring you the suggestion. So this solar eclipse in Gemini is great for focusing on coming up with the right questions. And that can truly change your life and everything that you are thinking about and you're concentrating on. So diving deeper and searching for those answers, or actually also allowing the answers to reveal themselves. That's also a strategy I really enjoy. Now, let's take a look at the solar eclipse chart for more clarity, because other planets also play a really interesting role in this picture. As we said, solar eclipse is exactly in Gemini, exactly on the 20th degree. So I would recommend you to check if you have any personal planets or cusps of houses around this degree, plus minus 5 degrees, I would say. And overall, the mutable signs can be more triggered. Those are Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, and Pisces. For those signs, the solar eclipse plays an even more significant role. And as we said here, we can find also the North Node which brings this focus towards the future. Mercury, which is retrograde and combust. So lots of processing of ideas. And also it's a nice time to fix something, as a negative idea that you might have had, especially if you tend to have a negative dialogue with yourself. Working on that is one of the smartest things you can do. And speaking of being smart, actually, this is one of the main things we need to concentrate on. Being smart and rational and concrete. Some help is also coming from Saturn. Saturn is in Aquarius, and Saturn is trining the solar eclipse. Saturn is probably the most pragmatic and rational planet. He's very concrete and also very dedicated and practical and consistent and patient and all the other positive qualities. And what we have here is a combination of some really practical indicators. Solar eclipse in Gemini, Saturn as a planet which is involved as well, Saturn in Aquarius, also a mental sign. So both the planets and the signs which are triggered really require a more rational and concrete approach. And what I find also interesting is that Neptune is squaring the solar eclipse, which means that emotions may play a more negative role for us. And I think that in this particular case, we need to pay more attention to the mind and the practical side and rational side of things. Neptune is one of the main emotional planets, and it's squaring the solar eclipse. So we won't find the solutions there. On the other side, Venus, as being the other emotional planet, doesn't have a connection with the solar eclipse. There is no aspect. So what comes here is what shows up here is that the emotional planets are not our helpers. And on the other side, the rational, pragmatic planets are truly helpful, like Mercury, like Saturn. So my general recommendation is try to listen to your rational, practical mind. And I know that in the spiritual world, very often we say that we should find the answers in our heart, that the heart knows all the answers and all of that. That is very true in many cases, but there are times when we need to pay more attention to the mind. And I really like this idea also that in the physical body, the mind, or the brain actually, is above the heart. And symbolically, that can be translated as the idea that the mind should always have some kind of control over our responses, our reactions, the expression of emotions. I'm not saying that we should be cold or emotionally distant, but if you allow your emotions to control you and your mind, that's also not a very good strategy. And that's even more true for this solar eclipse. And honestly, I'm saying this as being also a very emotional person. So I'm not coming from the place of, emotions are bad, it's something dangerous or whatever. No, emotions are amazing. That's the color of life and it's wonderful. But there are times when we need to rely more on the mind. And this solar eclipse is one of those times when we need to recognize and trust more our minds. So that's pretty interesting even for me as an advice, but that's what the planets are showing. So it's pretty obvious when you look at that. Some of the other planets which are also involved, that's quite amazing. We have three creative aspects: Jupiter, Uranus, and Pluto. They all have creative aspects with the solar eclipse, and creative aspects are pretty interesting actually, because they bring more choices. We have some choices to make here. What do you want to do? Do you want to change something? And we are not forced. That's the thing about the creative aspects, that it's not like a square. You're not pushed to make a decision or take action. You can do it, or maybe not. And the problem here is that sometimes, because we are not pushed, we can miss some opportunities. So I want to invite you to think about changes that you want to make and new choices that you want to make, without, even if you are not forced. That would be great actually, if you are not forced to do that. But it's truly a time for changes, because let me show you also here. We have a closed configuration of creative aspects: solar eclipse with Pluto, Pluto with Jupiter, Jupiter with Uranus, Uranus back to the solar eclipse. That's a closed configuration which includes only creative aspects. That's extremely rare, like extremely rare. And some of the most special people can have this aspect in their chart, or this combination of aspects. And it also shows that those are special times for us, when we can use this creative energy, we can make new and better choices, and we can change something because it's time and because we want to. And another interesting moment here is that there is no fire energy. No fire energy of this solar eclipse. Mars, which is one of the most important fire planets, is in a water sign, which happens to be also a fall position for Mars, and in a critical degree. So Mars is very, very weak. And there is a meaning behind that, in my opinion. The meaning is that we shouldn't force ourselves into doing something immediately. Especially with this Mercury retrograde, also no fire and very weak Mars. It's time to process things. It's time to go more internal and process those ideas, or come up with some kind of insights. And there will be a time to take action. Very soon, Mars is moving into a new sign. Actually, 1 or 2 days after the eclipse, Mars will move to Leo. And things will change eventually. So the time for taking action will come. Mercury will turn direct, so things are moving. But right now, at the time of this solar eclipse, what's more important is the internal processing and turning inside, listening to yourself, and at least coming up with important positive questions. The answers will show up later. That's for sure. So pretty interesting, pretty exciting solar eclipse. Again, check the exact degree to see which house or maybe planet will be triggered in your chart. And now let's say a few words about each of the signs. I would recommend you to check both your sun and rising sign, because they are both relevant. For Aries, the house which is triggered is 3rd. So lots of focus to ideas, communication, friends. It could be related to document stuff, to education, knowledge, your expression. For Taurus, we have 2nd house triggered, which means that resources, money, your energy, and all kinds of material and practical things. That's where your focus should go. For Gemini, of course, that's extremely important, because it's about recognizing yourself, seeing yourself in a new way, maybe making plans for personal changes or taking new actions eventually. So lots of focus on your individuality and what do you need to change, what kind of new choices would you like to make. For Cancer, 12th house is being triggered, which is a very deep, very private area. Psychologically, it can be quite enlightening. It may not necessarily bring external changes, but you may feel differently. You may look at things in the past or certain patterns you might have in a different way. So it's very important when it comes to psychological changes and processing certain ideas. For Leo, 11th house is being triggered by the solar eclipse, which brings attention to friendship, ideals, groups of people that you interact with, and overall your expectations about the future. Those are the top priorities. For Virgo, the solar eclipse triggers 10th house, which is pretty important, and it's about your career, your business, your reputation, and what would you like to do with a social impact or some kind of purpose. So some pretty big, important possibilities may show up. For Libra, the solar eclipse is pretty positive because it triggers 9th house. And this is one of the truly positive houses in the chart. So it's time to think about your future, your dreams, work on your beliefs. It could be very important when it comes to education or traveling as well. For Scorpio, the solar eclipse will trigger 8th house. So concentrate on deep psychological matters, balancing your own energy, taking care of your energy balance. And from a more practical perspective, it may involve money, resources, or even investments. For Sagittarius, the solar eclipse will trigger 7th house, which brings lots of focus to your relationships and partnerships and close interactions with other people or even your closest friends. You may reassess things. You may decide that it's time to communicate in a new way with other people. So lots of changes and increased awareness when it comes to your relationships. For Capricorn, the solar eclipse triggers 6th house, bringing lots of focus to your work and daily things and your health and the way you can serve other people, how you can support them. So it's time for some rational, practical decisions. And again, use your mind to guide you. For Aquarius, we also have a pretty positive solar eclipse because it triggers 5th house. And it's about the joy in life. Your love life, your children, your creativity, your hobbies. How can you change things, or what would you like to improve there, or what kind of ideas or answers do you need? Those are the key topics. And for Pisces, this solar eclipse triggers 4th house, which means more focus on personal life and family and everything which is private and related to your home. So that's shortly what each of the signs can expect. I find this solar eclipse pretty interesting and exciting. And I hope that we will all come up with better questions and better answers for our future. If you need help with finding some concrete answers based on your chart, you can check the readings I'm offering and the sessions and the coaching that you can have by me. Check the links below or go to marstars.net for more information. Thank you so much and happy solar eclipse.